What is poppin' people, my name is Shade and welcome back to the Legendary Endeavor, my Skyrim series in which we suffer through a playthrough on Legendary difficulty while trying to accomplish a list of objectives. I want to quickly thank all of you for bearing with me as I learn how to create content and express my appreciation for your support. And with that intro out of the way, let's jump straight into it. I headed into Dory's basement and listened as she explained that I was invited to a birthday party. I left the inn and stopped by Riverwood's favorite salesman to sell off some gear that I didn't need. While I was there, I bought a backpack to cosplay as Dora the Explorer and increase my ranged weapon strength. I then ditched the party in order to arrive fashionably late and traveled to Markarth to acquire a unique set of armor that would serve me better than bone mold. I stepped inside the local inn and made my way to the nearest room. I did some heavy reading, no lightweights this time, and left, making sure I closed the door very gently as to not wake up the sleepy little man. I exited the city and journeyed south in order to find a dripped out ghost. On my way, I ran into some bandit trouble and took care of the assailants in order to save my homie, Travis, the lost boy. I picked a flower that was minding its own business on a bridge, and then chased after its protector. The ghost knight broke my ankles, and then abandoned me as I pummeled a bear and consumed its soul. I continued along the path, following in the footsteps of the teleporting ghost until we ascended up a hill and got jumped by a group of Forsworn. I tried using my fire-resistant shield to defend against the shaman, but it proved insufficient and I was torched. Next, I tried using a bow and keeping the Forsworn at range. This maybe would have worked, but I never got to find out, as I was charged and forced to retreat and let Lydia act as a damage sponge. When all of their attacks were firmly focused on my follower, I pulled out my spoon and plate and beat the Briarheart until he fell. I then committed a war crime by demolishing a fleeing enemy, and returned to Lydia to land the final blow. I picked up a love letter from the Forsworn shaman and looted some pretty sick looking armor from a gaggle of corpses. I made my merry way on down to Karthspire, dodging saber cats through the power of ignoring their existence, and downright cheesing an Imperial Challenger. I arrived at Karthspire and took out the trash, and then Big Trash arrived, so I grabbed the human heart, plundered some booty, and made my escape. I ran past all of the other Forsworn and followed a river to run from the mud crabs. I discovered a wrecked water carriage, and after making Mother Nature sob herself to sleep, I looted all of the gems in the boat and continued to live out my dream of becoming a Cyrodiilic Spadetail. I traveled to a nearby Orcish stronghold and made my way back up the mountain to find the final resting place of the teleporting ghost. When I arrived, I was mugged by a couple of bandits. Being the overconfident brute that I am, I ran in mace first, realized that I could not take a 2v1, and got shot in the back trying to escape. Since my first attempt went so well, I tried using the Become Evil shout and made a mad dash for the grave. I completely ignored the shrine because I am the only god up here, and then accidentally summoned a powerful No. Ah. A powerful specter, who then slapped me with his flaming stick and sizzled me with his tickle magic. Next, I tried playing the quest as intended and purifying the heart in order to avoid fighting the Phantom Knight. I hid behind a rock as Lydia dealt with one bandit, and then dueled the bandit thug until I got impatient and charged her with my baby rattle. As the last bandit sighed her unaliving breath, I returned to the altar to claim my new set of armor. The Ebony Spell Knight armor is one of the strongest armors in the game, sitting only slightly below Madness armor in chestplate defense, so it was definitely a welcome change from Bone Mode.
You serious?
I gave Lydia my Steel Spell Knight set so we'd be twinsies, and then put a point into blocking for my most recent level up. Now that I was prepared to go to the party, I went back to the good old Whiterun stables in order to take a carriage to Solitude and meet with my contact. I got a front row seat at the evening's entertainment, sold my armor to Barry, and lied to an old woman because I don't want to deal with another quest right now.
Have you been to Whiterun? Oh well.
With my other matters concluded, I headed into the tavern to meet Manny. After his rude opening remarks, he offered to smuggle all of my contraband into the birthday party, so I loaded him up like a packing mule and forgot absolutely nothing essential. He told me to remain pure, and I headed to Kenneth's farm in order to meet with Dean and the carriage driver. Delphine gave me the party invite and some drip, and then all of my plans were ruined by a dragon.
Bruh, look at this dude.
I'm playing on Legendary difficulty, and I had just given all of my useful belongings to Maurice. I tried to hop in the carriage, but it was no use. I had to take down the dragon. I equipped what little weaponry and armor I had in order to bolster my defensive capabilities, and hid behind towers to avoid being deep fried. I got roasted.
Hello?
The dragon landed, and I used my Become Blue shout and charged the dragon head on. I used my potato damage steel swords and swung until the dragon reared back and collapsed at my feet. I got berated by Delphine, absorbed some dragon sauce, and after 15 tedious minutes, was finally permitted to board the carriage. I greeted the wizard outside the bouncy castle and headed inside to meet the host. The birthday girl tried to greet me, but I instead directed the conversation towards getting zooted out of my mind and ditched her to talk with the boys. I made a new friend, brought him a drink, and escaped the party like a true introvert. I grabbed my things, headed into the embassy, and immediately got caught trespassing and resorted to bonk combat. After dealing with the first soldier with no issue, I realized that I'd forgotten to give Mason any potions, and my skull was caved in the second I left the menu. Before I re-entered the embassy, I noticed that my food tab had a couple of provisions in it, and got a devious idea. I grabbed as many pieces of cheese, morsels of produce, and hunks of meat as I could carry, and resumed my quest to poop the party. I isolated the guards with a shout, and beat one within a yard of his life, before getting 2v1'd and panic-consuming an ungodly amount of bread and cheese. I used Berserker Rage to clean up the second soldier, and then pounded a Sparkle Mage into the floor with my baseball bat. I stepped into the great outdoors and instantly booked it for the solar door. I entered the room and found myself in a 3v1. After draining all of my provisions, I used the cheese shout in order to escape from the elves before breaking their ankles and escaping to the cellar. After making another several mad dashes to the escape hatch, I realized that this method would be impossible, and left the cellar. After being spawn killed during iframes, I reloaded a save to retry the 3v1, knowing I had no choice but to eliminate them. I tried luring the weaker enemies into a back room, and taking them on one by one. But before I could take out even one of the agents, I was destroyed by all three enemies at once. I tried a similar method again, but with a smaller room and doorway, using the door frame to fight only one opponent at a time. Miraculously, it worked, and in a matter of seconds, both Gary and the elf lay bloodied and bruised on the floor before me.
Boom, bam, bop.
I restored my health to the best of my ability, and then prepared to take on the wizard. I used Become Evan in order to charge the warlock, completely unharmed by his shock spells, and used shield bashes and power attacks to stun lock him. Much to my dismay, he managed to escape, heal himself, and shock me harder than the toaster I tried to get my toast out of using a fork. I tried again, and using my invincibility, power attacks, and big plate to my advantage, was able to assert dominance over the sparkler man by booping his snoot into next month. Triumphant, I marched down to the cellar and bashed in an arsonist's throat with my pizza tray. I released Eddie into the free world, and set myself up perfectly to read my favorite bedtime story, and then be in position to jump the Thalmor agents before they could even start monologuing. I beat Tweedledee and Tweedledum into submission, and headed into the wine cellar to leave the party in style. I watched Manny follow in Lydia's footsteps, looted the corpse, and then turned myself into a ghost, and ran right past the troll because I value life. I returned to Riverwood, told Delphine she was just being racist,
That seems hard to believe.
and grabbed all of my belongings. I disenchanted a couple of items, and decided that for once, I was gonna end the video outside of the Sleeping Giant's Inn. I made my way to Riften, and used my astounding charisma to call out a corrupt guard so he'd let me into the city.
Want everyone to hear you? I'll let you in.
I ignored Marty, and headed into the inn to speak with a contact. In typical Todd fashion, Brian refused to help me until I did a heist for him,
Expecting free information, eh?
because to progress through the quest, you must do more quests.
How I can help you.
It just works.
So I did a little bit of trolling, witnessed prejudiced police brutality,
Under arrest, Branchet.
This is insane. I didn't steal anything. I never saw this ring before in my entire life.
We can do this one of two ways. You can walk up with me to the keep, or I can drag your lifeless body. Your choice.
and did some awe-inspiring parkour to head into the Ratway. As I approached the gloomy sewer door, I thought to myself, wow, what a perfect place to end the video. And so I did.